This video was supported by AV Access. Right, so this is where we left off in the desk setup series. This is episode 4, I believe. I added like a column section at the back of this thing that helps support the whole like structure. You know, when we're rolling this thing around, a lot of things are like shaking, and I want that to be very stable. But it also helps with, like later down the line, we'll be adding a key light to this thing, and that will give us some mounting options in that regard. But this video is dedicated to a KVM switch. So AV Access actually reached out. They offered to send me the C20 dock, but then I asked them if I could check out that B30 because that one suits my needs a little bit better. If you don't know what a KVM is, basically I have 3 computers behind this whole setup. So I have 2 Windows rigs and 1 like MacBook. But I think, as you can imagine, like that second computer, like the second Windows rig, isn't really utilized all too much because, you know, it takes quite a lot of effort to switch to that thing. It comes with quite a lot of accessories, so pretty much every cable that you would need to set this thing up, and also a little remote. So it has an emulation feature going on, which means that all the computers think the display is already connected, and then when you eventually switch to that computer, you know, within 2 to 3 seconds it displays the image. Your mouse and keyboard also immediately switch with that. This model in particular allows 3 computers to be connected to 2 displays, so 1 laptop and 2 Windows rigs, and it supports 144 Hz at 1440p or 60 Hz at 4K. In terms of build quality, it's really good as the entire body is constructed out of metal, and it's this sheet metal fabrication technique. It looks pretty good and it feels really decent as well. I considered quite a few configurations. One is like just at the rear of the setup, where initially I wanted the laptop to be. Eventually though, I figured out that it's exactly the same size as my speaker, and seems so on this side is the teleprompter. We might be able to place it on the speaker itself with like a 3D printed component. Before we do that though, I do want to like thoroughly test it, because I don't want another piece of kit in my setup that, you know, causes issues. So I have been testing it for quite a while, and I did run into some issues, but that was mostly relating to my side of the story. The issue I ran into is mostly relating to how I have everything set up over here. So I have 2 Windows rigs on like a little cart, which is very far away. It's like 10 meters away. But 10 meter long HDMI cables have a lot of signal loss, and the dock just didn't want to like display the image. But eventually I had to order a HDMI repeater off of Amazon. Very confused as to how these things actually work, because I didn't plug in any extra power supplies or anything like that, and for some reason it just fixed the issue. Yeah, normally this process of integrating it with a 3D printed component is quite tedious, but I recently bought myself a 3D scanner. So I just quickly want to mention here that you don't necessarily need a 3D scanner to do this really super simple project. In fact, you don't need a 3D scanner at all, but it does help in certain scenarios like this, and you know, it seems so we have it anyway, might as well use it, right? But just keep that in mind, you don't need an expensive 3D scanner to do this. If you are interested in seeing more projects which are more like reverse engineering and that kind of stuff though, I'm busy with a really cool EDC multi-tool, which is a little bit smaller than the previous one we made. So definitely get subscribed if you're interested in that kind of stuff. So we can just take it to the scanning station, add some pucks to this thing, and then, you know, use the laser scanner to get a really accurate 3D model of it. And once we have that 3D model, we'll have to do some cleanup in the software to get rid of all the excess that, you know, also got scanned. But then after that, you know, also scanning the speaker side of things, because that has a lot of holes in it, which I'd like to reuse for the 3D printed component, and, you know, reuse the screw holes so that we don't need to screw new holes into the speaker. So I didn't actually buy the scanner to get like super complete scans. I just want to have very accurate measurements of the device that we're putting into the CAD software. But it's so addictive to where I try to do it anyway. Like with the speaker, I was there for ages just trying to get every little detail, you know. Once we have that though, we can export it as an STL, input it into Shaper 3D, and get started with the CAD drawing process. So you can definitely see that there's some parts which are kind of missing, and yeah, you can like fill that up in the software itself. You can see that it has a slight angle which goes backwards, or like it gets thicker to the end of the device. So I started off by just first creating some material between the speaker and the KVM switch, and then creating a flat sheet, lining that up with the side of it. And you know, it was a little bit of a tedious process trying to get that perfect, and because Shaper 3D doesn't allow too fine adjustments, so to say, it jumps in increments, and there's probably a way to turn that off or something like this. But yeah, after that we could mirror it and then shift it to the other side so that we know that everything is exactly the same. And what it was also really useful for is actually the bottom piece, because it has like these little rubber feet in there, and I'd actually like to recess that into the 3D printed component. And I'm not saying that my measuring skills aren't good enough to do this, but my caliper doesn't even reach that far, so I'd probably have to use like a tape measure. It just comes down to like this 3D scanner makes stuff so much easier and faster. And yeah, the reason I'm making these little indents for the rubber patches is so that it doesn't slide backwards and just like clamps onto it. So this was one of the first projects I actually did with the 3D scanner, and yeah, at this time I wasn't that confident yet, so I actually did a test print to check out if everything was working. It came out pretty okay. The only thing I didn't consider is that because we made those indents for the feet, I didn't lower the device into that as well. So there was some slight tolerance, not tolerance issues, but there was some slight deviation in where the hub wanted to sit and where it was actually held in place. So I went back to the CAD program, added some extra space there so that would fit, and then that second print, the printer kind of failed, but the CAD drawing was absolutely perfect. What I'm also really impressed with though is that all the holes that we made in this thing like exactly lined up with the speaker, so I didn't have to, you know, make new gaps in the speaker with some new screws. We just reused the old screw holes. Also removed the Behringer Float 8 from the setup, because the monitor arm that was on there before was one of those gas piston ones, which is really heavy. It doesn't really match up with, you know, the device that it's carrying, and it also interfered with the cables that would come out of the KVM. And it doesn't really clamp onto the KVM at all, but it does hold it in place, and that's the main concern I have, like rolling this thing around and something falling off, you know. I plugged in all the cables. It goes to like a 1440p monitor, which is 144 Hz. So I'm actually like reading the spec sheet right now, and I see that it also supports switching via a hotkey. So I hadn't actually thought about that, and if I had thought about that, I might have considered like a different integration for this thing. Yeah, let me know what you think, if we should integrate it in a different way, or if this is nice. I kind of like it like this, but visually there's a lot of stuff going on that side of the setup, with all of the cables of the audio interface as well, and with all of those ports of the KVM now as well. But maybe if it's been performing quite nicely for a couple months and I'm actually really convinced that it will like function all of the time, which up until now it has, then we could put it inside with the desktop, use like a hotkey to switch between systems. Special thanks to AV Access for sending this out, really helps out the channel, and I hope you enjoyed the video, it gave you some inspiration for your own setup. Yeah, see you in the next one.